Yesterday, the Commission on Elections proclaimed 12 new senators for the 18th Congress. 4 of them are newbies in the Senate, and these include outgoing Ilocos Norte Governor Imee Marcos. We now go above and beyond the headlines with the senator-elect to talk about her plans and in the Senate and many other things. Good evening, ma'am. Thank you for joining us, and congratulations.
Yes, maraming salamat. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I remember when we talked about how you tried so hard to appeal to the millennials. Remember, we had that interview on Politics as Usual,
yes,
together
right.
with Jingoy,
right.
Estrada. Yeah. And then, there was that part of your campaign that you were trying to appeal to the millennials and the plurals in Generation Y and Z. And I was wondering were you able to check, was there a way to check for you, to check kung, how you fared with the voters of that age? And I'll tell you why I'm asking.
I'd like to think we managed to do that because in non-traditional Marcos areas, such as Cebu City and Cebu Province, even in NCR, in the National Capital Region, where you would have thought there'd be great opposition and all kinds of anti-Marcos baiting. Nanalo naman ako eh.
Yeah,
for the first time, which is
Oo.
pretty historic for us, lalo na sa Cebu, lalo na sa mga student areas like Davao, in Baguio, and so on. So I'm very pleased about that actually, and it probably shows a new temper of the times and a new outlook in the X, Y, Z, and so on generation.
Interesting that you bring up yung non-traditional Marcos areas, because everybody in the very distant past, it used to be called the solid north vote. Now sometimes it's referred to as Ilocandia vote.
Yes.
But then, some analysts have pointed out, some strategists have pointed out, na yung mga Ilocanos anyway are spread out all over. No?
That's correct.
So what do you think is it? No, the fact that you came in at number 8 out of 12, it's quite a respectable finish. But, there, para bang minsan there are two sides kung sabihin na to this a Marcos victory in a senatorial election, and one side, and don't react muna ha, is that there is yung
Not
tinatawag
violently,
no, is that there is this parang historical revisionism that had gone on, and that the other is that there has always been this underlying support for your father, that and by extension for you children, the two of you at least who ran for political office, which somehow finds its way to the surface every time, and in spite of the fact that it's been 33 years since people power. So what is it, no? And because you pointed out na tama, diba? You're 8 out of 12, no? And then you did well in areas that you thought would be anti-Marcos.
Oo naman. Oo.
So which, what would
Sa
explain
palagay ko,
this?
the great overwhelming number, of course, comes from the solid north. So I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you sa aking mga kailyan. Dahil the north remembers, and I will never forget. They voted solidly and well.
Yeah.
At,
Kailyan, what is Kailyan?
Kailyan is kababayan.
Kababayan.
Kababayan in Ilocano. And they were all over the place, certainly in NCR, they were here. They were also all over the OFW, so I did quite well in Hong Kong, even in Moscow, where I never went. So it's a real blessing. So, maswerte kami doon. Yung revisionism, siguro, ang issue may have something to do with the millennials' tremendous access to information. It's a different time. They're able to research. They're able to look up stuff.
Yeah.
They're also listening to their lolas, perhaps, having heard so much propaganda and
Or is it because
version.
sometimes kasi some people say that when you're too near something that happens in recent
Yes, that's right.
the recent past, no?
It's
Then
so
when
emotionally
so much
laden.
time passes,
That's right.
nagbabago. Kasi kanina you said parang there's a different temper, no? Parang nagbago. Somebody has said
I
before.
find that the younger people are so interested. They keep asking us, and perhaps they were also at fault because my family and many of those who worked for my dad were remiss. We just never told our side of the story, not to
You think it is
revise
because
history, but because. Well, we had no access to media. It was always one side of the story. Nobody was interested, and we were all just a bit frightened, perhaps, of telling what we knew. But I think it's our duty now to say what we know and our side of the story. And we
So
were
it's just
there,
for you.
we were
it's-
participants.
For you, it's just a matter of telling your side of the story. Ganun
Yes,
lang. And then if
I-
you do, and if you did, then people would understand you. And
I think-
that is why you and Bongbong were elected, pa rin.
Well, there's so many people speaking up whom perhaps weren't there, weren't old enough. Sa amin, medyo marami naman sa amin talagang nagtrabaho noon, kilala namin yung mga taong pinag-uusapan. It's our duty to really talk about it. And very frequently, I think the students now keep asking to find out exactly what happened. It's an opportunity.
when you talk about
my father said, history's not done with me yet. So perhaps he's right, and history will eventually judge him as it will, and it's not happened yet.
when you say students, it's like you take it as one solid group. Because there
Hindi
are
naman,
also
pero
students.
marami-
Meron din kasing anti-Marcos
Oo
pa rin,
naman,
di ba?
oo naman, oo
There
naman.
is there is also that sentiment.
Pero parang
Diba?
dumadami.
Dumadami yung...
Dumadami nagtatanong sa amin, ano ba talaga nangyari? What exactly happened? And what was the kabataang barangay? Ano ba yung Nutriban? Naku talaga naman, yung mga kadiwa stores. They keep asking how were these bridges built in Leyte? And how did all this stuff happen? And
What do you
why
mean?
was there
There are
so
some
much
people who are
infrastructure-
parang nostalgic, ganon, about the
Kunwari,
Marcos years?
I think they hear also siguro sa mga lola nila na mas magaan daw yung buhay noon, mas mura yung bilihin, napakaraming kalsadang pinatayo, and the irrigation, for example, na hindi na nadagdagan. And even in Mindanao, they're still going through the same Buddha Road, the same bridges in Misamis. So they keep asking me, how was it that so much was built? And sometimes I know the answer, sometimes I really don't, because I was a kid. But by and large, the curiosity has grown, and they keep asking us all sorts of questions, and borrowing books and so on.
Okay, asking all sorts of questions. We're going to do that when we come back. We'll hear more from Senator-elect Imee Marcos. She'll still be with us after this quick break. This is Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. Live guest, Senator-elect Imee Marcos. Kanina pinag-usapan natin the Marcos years, no? And apparently there are some people who are nostalgic about it, but there are also people who we're still angry about it. There is that anti-Marcos sentiment. And some people describe it as what happened here is that the pendulum swung from this side all the way here, and then now it's swung all the way back. Ganun ba? Is that how you see it?
Well, I have tremendous respect for everybody's opinion. But I think they should also allow us to speak, and we should also be allowed to have our breathing space. So, yun nga. Sabi ko nga sa kanila wag na matakot sa akin kung sino man yung mga bashers, haters, yung mga galit sa Marcos. Okay lang, tiis-tiis na lang dahil hindi naman mapaghiganti yung pamilya ko. We're not really vindictive, and we've put up with it for a long time too.
Yeah.
So, okay lang, tiisan muna tayo at respetuhan sana.
Yeah, but do you agree with that the pendulum swings every now and then? Sometimes it takes 10, 15 years.
Well,
But from one extreme to the other extreme and then back, and
Well,
is that how we should view our country's history?
Well, I'd like to think that it's not just a pendulum swinging from one extreme to the other extreme, but more importantly, that we are in fact getting better insight, that we have gained perspective, that we're beginning to better understand our past as we forge into the future. So it's very, very important to me that we finally understand. But having said that, I think we're also getting to the point where we are learning from the lessons of the past, and realize that there are things and problems that remain with us after 33 years, after a long, long time. Andyan pa rin ang problema ng gutom, ng hirap, ng unemployment. At dahil dito, finally, tumakbo na rin ako sa Senado. Tagal-tagal na ako pinipilit noon. It's been a long, long time that every time there's an election process, I always get asked if I want to run for the Senate. And I've never been inspired to do so. I always thought it was a talking shop and baka hindi ako bagay dyan. But
And you were
finally,
used
because
to
of
Congress
President Duterte, I feel that there's a chance for genuine and comprehensive change.
Specifically, if you're going to be very specific, what is it exactly that you will do as a senator that will address the issue of poverty?
I think many of the governors and the mayors in the different islands have come back to Ilocos time and again because of the apparent lack of poverty. parating tinatanong sa akin, no, why is it you're in a very far, remote backwater, and yet the poverty levels are so low. We have no city, no burgeoning metropolis to drive growth. We really have no export processing zone. We have no free ports, and yet our poverty levels are lower than Metro Manila. So I finally came out with this, with the anti-poverty toolkit, which is sort of a workbook that you can tick off, and we have some rules already in Ilocos na sana ma-scale. In Mindanao, particularly, Marawi, of course, is the best exercise. It would be wonderful to make it come back again, built back much better, because it's very clear that the footprint of poverty is the same footprint of terrorism, of violence, of crime.
When you say that there are certain rules that parang chine-checklist, like,
parang
give us an example of one.
Natuto
Like what?
Like, for example, micro-targeting. Put a face, know the poor. Dahil yung DSWD, there are all these statistics, right, that they provide. Eto, this is the huge number of poor. Eto yung extreme poverty. Eto yung mga hunger hotspots. But they're all numbers. At the local level, you can micro-target, you can know them, you can figure out who is the old lady who's bedridden, and don't make her a conditional cash transfer na wag nang conditional. Alagaan mo na lang kasi talagang matanda na, may sakit pa. Pagkatapos noon, you can also look for the breakthrough poor. Nag-imbento na kami ng aming sariling numbers. Yung breakthrough, yung halimbawa, namatayan yung third year or fourth year college kid. Hindi nakatuloy ng kanyang pag-aaral. Ang puhunan ng gobyerno dyan, 1 year lang mag-aaral, may graduate ka na. So doon, unahin mo na siya. Or else the farmer, nasalanta ng bagyo, yung kanyang ani, pero he has his land, he has a skill set, masipag, maayos, until he had the bad luck of a terrible typhoon that wiped out his harvest. In which case, just help him na. Give him some cash, make sure he gets some work going with desilting and fixing up his tilapil and so
that's
on.
micro-targeting.
Yeah, so we can find that. And then the other thing, of course, is a basic lesson that we've learned is just keep the basic commodities very cheap. Find ways to keep rice, gasoline, and all these basic goods very, very cheap. And that's the reason I talk about kadiwa. That was my father's old experiment. Of selling at very, very cheap prices, basically cutting out the middleman.
Senator, I mean, now that the campaign is over and you are a senator-elect, and like we were saying earlier, no, 8 out of 12, that's quite a respectable finish.
Considering the number of incumbents.
Si Bongbong was 7th, no, in 2010, no? Will you be willing now to squarely address and put to rest the issue, and then nagsiseryoso na yung mukha mo ngayon, this issue about the Princeton and UP Law School degrees?
Yes, ay, naku, nakakapagod na yan. No, I think, you know, all this rancor and all this blame saying, perhaps it's time to put it aside. Let's focus on legislation. Magseryoso na tayo. These problems remain with us. Here we are still finger pointing. Tama na. Awat na. Let's get down to work already. Tapos ng eleksyon.
Get down to work. Pero in other words, my question was, would you be willing to address the issue already? You know, tell people na,
Di ba tapos
kasi
na?
parang
Turuan ng turuan
ang feeling siguro ng tao is, you know, they're not sure that you did address the issue. Did you graduate from Princeton? Did you graduate from UP Law?
Ang dami-dami
but you did. Kasi what people are sure about is that you did attend.
Paulit-ulit na yung na-answer. Paulit-ulit pa rin tinatanong. I don't know what answer they'd be happy with, but for me, ang importante, I ran on my track record. I don't think it can be disputed. They can go to Ilocos, see what's happened. I've also been a congressperson for the longest time. Nag-umpisa ako sa barangay. Siguro ako lang yata yung national, nag-umpisa sa barangay, sa kabataang barangay. Yun ang tinatakbuhan ko. And I think I bring a lot to the table because of my local government experience, years in the legislature, and all these personal accusations, pati birth certificate, pati sino yung ama at tatay, ang nanay mo, kung ilang taon ka. Ang dami-dami ng personal nakakatuwa na. Huwag na natin aksayahin yung panahon. Let's not waste time. There's a great deal of work to do. The Duterte agenda is a thick and copious one. Let's get on with it.
So, para bang let's talk about performance, let's not talk about degrees.
And also our plans for the future. Let's get to work. I'm very anxious to get to work. It's been a bruising campaign, there's no doubt. And for some
Bruising,
reason,
pero 8 out of 12.
bruising
not exactly
kasi ang dami-dami ng demolition job, nakakapagod na eh. Nagre-reklamo na nga yung iba at eto nga. But having said that, I think I did decently. Considering it was a very, very competitive slate, napakaraming comebacking, napakaraming artista, napakaraming incumbent. So it wasn't very easy, but we managed. So I'm really pleased about that.
Well, you managed. Dala mo yung pangalang Marcos eh. Di ba?
Well, oo naman.
Apart from the performance, yes.
Lahat may pangalan this
Yeah,
year.
oo.
Ibang klase itong kampanya to. Lahat may pangalan. Kung hindi pangalan, yung mga bago, bit-bit ng administrasyon. Talagang mabigat itong taon na to.
I wish we had more time para pwede pang pag-usapan. Marami pang pag-usapan sana. But for now, thank you very much. Senator-elect
Thanks very
Imee
much.
Marcos.
Yes.